The bank called me and my heart froze. "Your husband's here, with a woman who looks exactly like you." I pressed the phone tighter to my ear, my hands shaking, my chest hammering. Was he even supposed to be in town? He had told me he was on a business trip, leaving me alone for the week. My mind raced. How could he be here with someone who mirrored me, smiling in my life like a cruel joke? I wanted to scream, but my voice caught. I knew, deep down, that everything I thought I had was about to crumble. And what I was about to do next would change everything. I still remember the exact moment my world began to unravel. My name is Melissa. I am 32 years old, and I had always believed in the foundation of my life, my marriage, my home, and the trust I placed in the man I loved. That foundation shattered the instant the bank called. The words echoed in my ears, sharp and cold. "Your husband's here, the woman who looks like you." My hands went numb and my chest tightened, as though something inside me had been crushed. I could not breathe. He was supposed to be away on a business trip. He had promised. He had smiled and kissed me goodbye that morning, telling me he would call, that he would be back in a few days. And now he was here, with someone who mirrored me like a cruel reflection in a broken mirror. I sank into the kitchen chair, gripping the edge until my knuckles whitened. My mind raced, a storm of disbelief, confusion, and anger tearing through me. How could he do this? How could he lie so effortlessly, smile so convincingly, and live a double life behind my back? The world suddenly felt alien. The walls of my home, once comforting and warm, now seemed like cages, closing in with every heartbeat. The clock ticked too slowly, mocking me with its rhythm, each second stretching into an eternity. I forced myself to stand, shaking, and walk to the window. Outside, the street was quiet, peaceful even, with the soft hum of distant cars and the whisper of the wind in the trees. Nothing betrayed the storm that had erupted in my life. Nothing hinted at the betrayal waiting for me just down the road. The calm outside was almost worse than the chaos inside, because it made the reality hit harder. He had chosen this. He had chosen to deceive, to betray, to manipulate me while I trusted him with everything. And now I would have to face it. My phone vibrated again. Was the bank. Their voice steady but urgent. "Ma'am, he is asking for a private meeting. They are both here." "We thought you should know immediately." My stomach lurched. I wanted to hang up, to pretend this was not happening, but some force inside me would not allow it. I had to see it. I had to witness the truth, even if it destroyed me. I dressed quickly, my hands trembling as I pulled on a simple blouse and jeans. I did not care about my appearance. Nothing mattered except confronting the reality that had been thrust upon me. The drive to the bank felt surreal. Every red light, every passing car, every honking horn seemed to mock me, reminding me of the life I thought I had and the life I was about to lose. My mind replayed every conversation, every promise, every laugh we had shared. Did he plan this from the very beginning? Was our marriage always a lie? The questions multiplied, each one sharper than the last, cutting into me with invisible knives. When I arrived, I hesitated outside the building. The sunlight reflected off the glass doors, bright and blinding, almost like a spotlight exposing the truth I was not ready to face. I could see him through the lobby, standing with her. My stomach sank. She wore a smile that mirrored my own in a way that was almost grotesque, like looking into a funhouse mirror that distorted reality. My husband looked calm, confident even, as if he had rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. And I was frozen, trapped in a mixture of rage, fear, and disbelief. I stepped inside and the receptionist looked up, startled. I gave her a quick nod, my heart pounding like a drum in my chest. Every step toward them felt heavier than the last, as though gravity itself was trying to hold me back. He saw me then. His smile faltered, just slightly, but it was enough. The mask had slipped for a moment, and I saw the fear, the guiltor perhaps, the calculation behind his eyes. She turned toward me, her smile unwavering. My body reacted before my mind could. a shiver running down my spine, my fists clenching at my sides. There was something in her confidence, in the way she moved and spoke, that screamed arrogance. She had known exactly what she was doing, and she did it with a smug sense of victory. My blood boiled and a fire ignited deep inside Mia, fire that whispered of justice, of retribution, of making him and her pay for the betrayal they thought they could get away with. The air between us was thick, almost suffocating, charged with silent words and unspoken threats. I could hear the faint ticking of the wall clock, the low hum of the air conditioning, even the subtle shuffle of papers on the counter. Every sound was amplified, every movement a dagger to my composure. I wanted to speak, to scream, to demand answers, but my voice betrayed me, stuck somewhere between rage and disbelief. I realized then, with a clarity that cut through the haze of shock, that I was not going to break. I would not crumble under their deceit. Whatever this was, whatever they had planned, they were about to learn that underestimating me was the gravest mistake of their lives. And in that moment, I made a decision that would change everything. If you have ever felt betrayed by someone you trusted with your whole heart, hit that like button and subscribe right now. This is not just a story of heartbreak. It's a story of discovering strength, of taking back control when the people closest to you try to destroy your world. Watch closely, because what happens next will shock you. And by the end, you will see just how satisfying justice can be when it is earned. The next few days were a blur of silent fury and simmering fear. Every time I thought I could breathe, he found a new way to remind me of his betrayal. He sent messages vague and manipulative, as if daring me to confront him, as if he thrived on my uncertainty. I stared at my phone for hours, my thumb hovering over the screen, trembling, my chest tight with anger and disbelief. How could he act so confidently, knowing exactly what he had done to me? I felt powerless, trapped in a game I had not agreed to play. At home, the air felt heavier than ever. I moved through the rooms with quiet steps, careful not to let my anxiety leak through. Every object, every piece of furniture seemed to mock me, reminding me of the life I thought I had. I could not eat, could not sleep. At night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, imagining them together, imagining the audacity it took for him to think he could destroy me and walk away without consequence. I felt a rage that I had never known before, coiling in my chest like a living thing, demanding attention, demanding action. He had always been controlling, subtle at first, but over time, insidious. I had ignored the small signs, the little lies, the dismissive words, the secretive phone calls. I had told myself I was overreacting, that I was imagining things. And now, faced with the undeniable truth, I realized how deep his deception ran. The woman who mirrored me was not just a casual fling, she was his calculated instrument of betrayal. Her presence, her smug smile, her imitation of my gestures and expressions was deliberate, cruel, and designed to humiliate me. The bank incident was only the beginning. I started noticing subtle things, charges on our accounts I did not recognize, suspicious emails, the faint scent of someone else's perfume lingering in the house, just enough for me to question my sanity. My husband acted as if nothing had happened, smiling, nodding, pretending our life was untouched. But I knew better. I could feel the deception vibrating in the very walls around me. It was a living thing, breathing, mocking me. One evening, I confronted him directly. I waited until he returned from work, timing it perfectly, my hands trembling, but my voice steady. "I know about her," I said. My eyes locked on his. He froze, and for a fleeting moment, I saw the flicker of fear. But it was gone almost immediately, replaced by arrogance, the same arrogance that had fueled his betrayal. He laughed, a cold, dismissive laugh that made my stomach turn. "What are you talking about?" he asked, as if I were insane. The audacity, fine, my blood boiled. I watched him as he sat there, pretending innocence. But every movement, every glance betrayed the truth. The way his fingers drummed nervously on the table, a slight tightening of his jaw. The way his eyes flicked to the phone on the counter as if expecting a message from her. I could see it all, and with each passing second, my resolve hardened. This was not just betrayal. This was a war, and I had just been pushed into the battlefield. I began documenting everything. Every message, every suspicious call, every lie he told. I created folders on my laptop, files with dates, screenshots, recordings. It was meticulous, obsessive, but necessary. I needed proof, not just for myself, but for the satisfaction of ensuring that when the time came, there would be no escape, no way for him to wriggle free. Every piece of evidence felt like a small victory, a way to reclaim control over a situation that had been spiraling beyond my reach. The woman appeared again, unexpectedly. I saw her in the grocery store, standing near the produce section, smiling as if she belonged there. My stomach dropped, my hands clenched, and I felt that familiar surge of fury. She had invaded my life, my home, my marriage, and now she dared to show up in my world uninvited. I followed her at a distance, noting the way she carried herself, the way she glanced around, confident, arrogant, smug. I wanted to confront her, to scream, to lash out, but I held back. Patience, I reminded myself. Planning this was not a moment for emotion. This was a moment to observe, to prepare, to understand the enemy. Every day felt like walking through a minefield. I never knew when the next betrayal would appear, the next lie would hit. I felt constantly watched, constantly tested. And yet, somewhere inside me, beneath the exhaustion and fear, a new voice began to whisper. It was soft at first, almost timid, but it grew louder with each passing day. Do not let them win. You are stronger than you know. You will not be broken. The tension built until it was unbearable. Every encounter with him, every glimpse of her, every message and call was a spark threatening to ignite an inferno. I could feel the change inside me. I was no longer just the woman betrayed. I was becoming something else, something sharper, more dangerous. I began to plan, to calculate, to imagine the perfect way to turn the tables. And with every passing day, the fire inside me grew, until it was no longer just anger. It was determination, a fierce, unyielding determination to reclaim what was mine and make them pay for every ounce of pain they had caused. I remember the night it all finally snapped. I had spent hours sitting on the edge of my bed, staring at the ceiling, the room bathed in the pale glow of the streetlight outside. Every memory of him, every laugh, every lie, every stolen moment of trust pressed down on me, heavy and suffocating. My chest ached, my hands shook, and for the first time I felt the full weight of betrayal. I had been patient, cautious, careful. I had played the part of the silent victim, documenting, observing, waiting. But patience had its limits. That night I realized I had reached mine. I could feel the rage like fire coursing through my veins, hot and sharp, demanding action. It was no longer enough to simply know the truth. Knowing without acting was a slow torture, a perpetual knife twisting in my gut. I wanted more than justice. I wanted reckoning. I wanted them to understand, in a way that could not be ignored, the depth of the pain they had inflicted. I rose from the bed, pacing the room, my mind racing faster than my heart. Every possible scenario, every possible reaction, every way to make them pay for their arrogance spun through my thoughts. My husband had underestimated me from the very beginning. He thought I was fragile, that I would crumble quietly. He believed I would never confront him, that I would quietly let his betrayal go unnoticed. He was wrong. Every assumption he had made about me would be proven false. I sat at my desk, my laptop open, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I reviewed all the evidence I had collected: messages, photos, receipts, phone logs. Every small piece of proof was a brick in the foundation of the plan I was about to build. I felt a strange calm descend over me, a clarity that I had not felt since the day I discovered the truth. For the first time since the betrayal, I was in control. The fear, the confusion, the pain, they had no power over me anymore. I had harnessed them, transformed them into strategy. I thought about him, about her, about the audacity of their confidence. Every laugh he had shared with her, every kiss, every smile, they would all come back to haunt him. I imagined their faces when they realized that I had anticipated their moves, that I had mapped out every step of their deceit, and that I was ready to strike with precision. The thought sent a shiver down my spine, a mix of fear and exhilaration because I knew I was finally no longer a victim. I was the force they had never expected. I began sketching out the plan carefully, methodically. I wrote notes, drew diagrams, listed contingencies. Every possibility was accounted for. I knew that revenge, to be satisfying, had to be flawless. It could not be messy. It could not be impulsive. It had to be undeniable, unavoidable, and inescapable. And I would deliver it in a way that ensured they felt every ounce of the humiliation and loss they had tried to inflict on me. Sleep became impossible. My mind refused rest, circling endlessly around every detail, refining, adjusting, perfecting. I would wake in the middle of the night, jot down ideas, replay scenarios in my head. I felt alive in a way I had never felt before. The rage that had once threatened to consume me had transformed into sharp, focused energy. I was no longer broken. I was calculating. I was prepared. The turning point came when I saw them together again unexpectedly in a quiet cafe downtown. They did not notice me at first. He was laughing the way he used to laugh with me, unaware that I was observing, recording, memorizing every detail. She leaned in close, touching his arm, smiling in that smug, infuriating way that made my blood boil. For a moment, I felt the old pain, the helplessness I had carried for days, but it was fleeting. I recognized it, named it, and then I turned it into resolve. I left without confronting them, but I carried with me a new understanding. This was not about anger anymore. It was about strategy. It was about patience. It was about timing. They had underestimated me, and they had made the fatal mistake of thinking I would act like a wounded prey. But I was no longer prey. I was predator. And I would strike when the moment was perfect, when their arrogance had blinded them to every warning. That night, back in my apartment, I wrote a single note to myself, a reminder of my purpose. They will regret underestimating me. They will feel every ounce of the pain they caused. They will learn that betrayal has consequences. It was short, simple. But it carried the weight of everything I had experienced and everything I was about to do. I finally allowed myself a small, almost imperceptible smile. The first true smile I had felt since the betrayal. I knew in that moment that nothing would ever be the same. The woman who mirrored me, the man who had deceived me, the life they thought they could destroy, they were about to discover the true meaning of my resolve. I had reached my breaking point. And from that breaking point emerged something far more powerful. Clarity, focus, and an unyielding determination to reclaim everything that was mine. For the first time, I felt unstoppable. The plan began quietly, almost invisibly. That was the beauty of it. No raised voices, no dramatic confrontations, just precision. I started by organizing everything I had collected, laying it out across my dining table like pieces of a puzzle. Screenshots, bank statements, time-stamped photos. Messages he thought I would never see. Receipts from hotels he claimed were business expenses. Felt surreal seeing my marriage reduced to cold evidence, but it also felt powerful. Every document was proof that I was not imagining things. Every file was a step closer to control. I ran my fingers over the papers, feeling their edges, grounding myself in the reality of what I was about to do. My heart was racing, but my hands were steady. That difference mattered. Fear makes your hands shake. Determination makes them firm. The first step was silence. I became calm, agreeable, observant. At home, I smiled more. I asked him how his day was. I listened. I watched the way his shoulders relaxed, the way his guard dropped. He believed he was winning. He believed I was still confused, still broken. That arrogance was my greatest ally. He started slipping up almost immediately. He left his phone unattended more often. He spoke carelessly, using names he should not have known, mentioning places he had never told me about. Every mistake he made tightened the net around him. I never corrected him. I never questioned him. I stored everything away, building something far bigger than he could imagine. The next step was timing. Revenge without timing is chaos. Revenge with timing is poetry. I contacted the bank first, quietly, professionally. I requested a full review of our joint accounts. I asked for transaction histories, access logs, signature verifications. My voice was calm, almost detached, but inside I was vibrating with anticipation. The banker treated me with respect, not knowing they were handing me ammunition. Then I met with a legal advisor, not for drama, not for divorce, for structure, for protection. I needed to know exactly how far I could go without risking myself. I listened carefully, took notes, asked precise questions. When I walked out of that office, the plan was no longer emotional. It was strategic. The execution began with exposure, not destruction. I invited his family to dinner. Casual, warm, comfortable. I cooked his favorite meal. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the kitchen, and for a moment, the normalcy felt haunting. Like acting in a play where I already knew the ending. He was relaxed, laughing, playing the devoted husband. I watched him from across the table, studying the way he spoke, the confidence in his voice. It amazed me how easily he wore his lies. After dinner, when everyone was seated, I stood up. My heart thudded in my ears, but my voice was steady. That was important. I did not want chaos. I wanted clarity. I placed the first document on the table. "This is a hotel receipt from last Thursday," I said. "You told me you were in meetings all night." Silence fell instantly. He frowned, confused, then annoyed. I placed the second document down. "This is a bank withdrawal from our account made 2 hours later." His face changed, slightly enough for me to notice. Then I placed the screenshots. Messages, photos, timestamps. One by one. Each paper landed with a soft sound, but in my mind they crashed like thunder. No yelling, no accusations, just facts. His family stared at the table, then at him, then at me. The room felt heavy, like the air itself was holding its breath. His mother's hand moved slowly to her mouth. His brother leaned back, stunned. He tried to speak. The words did not come. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not satisfaction. Authority. That night was not about humiliation. It was about stripping away his illusion of control. But I was not done. The next step was her. I contacted her workplace anonymously. Not with threats, not with emotion, with documentation. Evidence that she was involved in financial fraud using a married man's joint accounts. Companies take documentation seriously. They ask questions. They investigate. That alone was enough to destabilize the fantasy she had built. I saw her days later in a parking lot. Her posture was different. Her confidence was cracked. She moved like someone who had just realized the world was not as safe as she thought. That moment was quiet, but it was powerful. The final piece was public truth. It's not social media chaos, not screaming posts. It's just honesty in the right spaces. Family, friends, people who mattered. The story spread on its own, clean and undeniable. Lies collapse when surrounded by truth. At home he unraveled. He begged. Then he blamed. Then he denied. Then he broke. I watched him cycle through every emotion he had once forced on me. Confusion, fear, powerlessness. The symmetry was almost poetic. One night he stood in the doorway, his voice low, fragile. "You planned this." I looked at him and nodded. "You created it." That was the moment he understood. Not just that he was caught, but that he had lost. I felt no rush of cruelty. It's only a deep, steady sense of restoration. Like reclaiming a part of myself that had been stolen. The execution was complete. Not with chaos, but with control. Not with destruction, but with clarity. And the most powerful part was this: I never had to raise my voice. I simply raised the truth. It all came to its peak one chilly evening, the kind of night where the air bites your skin and the world feels sharper. I had invited them both to the very restaurant he had once bragged about taking her to. The one with the high ceilings, polished wood, and dim amber lights that always made people feel important. He did not know I had arranged everything. He believed he was in control, that he could flaunt his betrayal one last time without consequence. That arrogance was a gift. I arrived early, sitting at a corner table where I could see every entrance. The candlelight flickered across my face, painting shadows that made me appear calm, collected, untouchable. I sipped my water slowly, letting the tension build, feeling the pulse of my plans sinking with the beat of my heart. Every second was deliberate, every glance from the door a signal. They arrived together, smiling, the kind of confident, careless smile that comes from believing you are untouchable. I could see the way he held her hand, as if the world belonged to them. My stomach tightened, but this time the feeling was not fear. It was anticipation. My fingers rested lightly on the table, but inside they itched to move, to strike, to reclaim what had been taken. As they approached, I stood greeting them with a warmth I did not feel. A mask of civility that concealed everything simmering beneath. They barely recognized me in the calm, controlled way I carried myself, the way my eyes held a quiet fire. We sat, and I waited. I let the small talk drift like smoke across the table, every word a test, every pause a trap. I watched him relax, thinking he had nothing to fear. That confidence, that smug assurance, was the final thread I would pull. When the server placed the menus down, I slid a folder across the table. The subtle weight of it, the sound of the paper sliding over the polished wood, caught his attention. He frowned. He looked at her. She tilted her head, puzzled. I opened it slowly, deliberately, letting the papers fall into view. Receipts, bank statements, photos, messages, records of every lie, every secret, every betrayal. I did not speak at first. Let them take it in. The silence stretched, heavy, almost unbearable. The air itself seemed to pulse with expectation. Then I spoke, my voice low, precise, each word deliberate. Do you remember this? I tapped a page with a hotel receipt, then another with a bank withdrawal. Their faces shifted. Confusion, denial, fear. He opened his mouth, but no words came. He tried to reach for the folder, but I moved it just out of reach, my eyes locked on his. I wanted him to feel it, the helplessness, the loss of control, the reality of his actions displayed for all to see. She leaned forward, her expression faltering. Confidence cracked, her smugness dissolving into panic. The realization hit her that this carefully crafted life built on deception and arrogance was collapsing. The audacity of it all, the cruelty she had worn like armor, had no defense against the truth. I continued page by page, exposing every lie with calm precision. I let my voice remain steady, even as my heart pounded, even as my palms itched to grip his arm or slap the audacity from her face. I did not need to yell. I did not need to threaten. The evidence spoke. The documentation sang a symphony of justice louder than any scream could. At one point, I paused, watching him. His face was pale, sweat forming at his hairline. He swallowed hard, blinking rapidly. I could see his mind racing, desperate for a way out that did not exist. That moment, frozen and electric, was the pinnacle of my triumph. The waiter approached, sensing the tension, unsure what to say. I smiled politely, my lips tight, my eyes still locked on them. Every detail mattered. Every pause, every glance, every subtle gesture added to the effect. When I finally closed the folder, their expressions were shattered. He stammered, trying to defend himself, but the words fell flat, meaningless, irrelevant. She shrank into her chair, her earlier confidence replaced by an unmistakable terror. I leaned back in my chair, finally allowing myself a slow, deep breath. Relief washed over me in waves, mingling with the thrill of justice. It was not chaos, not vengeance without thought. It was perfection. Every lie exposed, every manipulation undone. I had not needed to yell, not needed to confront them with rage. I had only needed to be meticulous, patient, and unflinchingly precise. I watched as they left, her arms slipping from his as if she had suddenly realized he was not the fortress she imagined him to be. His steps were hesitant, unsure. He glanced back once, eyes wide, the first real fear I had ever seen in him. I let the moment linger, savoring it quietly. Not cruelty, not joy in pain, but validation. The truth had triumphed. My dignity had triumphed. I had triumphed. Outside, the night was crisp, silent, waiting. I stood for a moment, breathing in the cold air, feeling the tension in my body dissolve like smoke. The city around me went on unaware, ordinary, but inside me everything had shifted. The weight of betrayal had lifted, replaced by clarity and control. I allowed myself a small, victorious smile. Not smug, not cruel, just complete. Every step I had taken, every detail I had anticipated, every moment of restraint had led to this. In that instant, I knew something profound. I was no longer the woman they had tried to destroy. I was untouchable, unbroken, and unshakable. And I would never let anyone underestimate me again. Sitting in my apartment that night, the world quiet around me, I allowed myself to feel everything I had been holding back. Relief, triumph, validation all mingled with an odd, almost serene clarity. For so long I had been trapped in fear and uncertainty, haunted by the betrayal of someone I had loved and trusted completely. I had been powerless then, my world collapsing while I watched, helpless, as my life was dismantled by lies. But now I realized that powerlessness was only temporary. Strength is born in those moments of devastation, when the only choice left is to rise. I thought about him, about her, about the arrogance that had fueled their actions. Karma had a way of catching up, often quietly, often through the patient, deliberate hand of truth. Watching the consequences of their choices unfold was not about cruelty. It was about justice, the natural balance of actions and consequences. They had believed they were untouchable, that I would silently endure their betrayal. But the universe does not favor arrogance. It favors those who endure, who observe, and who act with purpose when the time is right. I reflected on my own journey through the chaos. The pain had been real. The sleepless nights, the anxiety, the creeping doubt that perhaps I had been imagining things, all of it had been a crucible, forging something stronger within me. I realized that suffering is not weakness. It is a teacher. Every tear shed, every moment of trembling fear, every heartbeat filled with anger had honed me, sharpened me, prepared me for the moment I would reclaim my life, and reclaim it I had. But in the reclaiming, I discovered something more profound. Power does not always roar. Power often whispers. It is patience. It is strategy. It is the quiet confidence that comes from knowing that when the moment arrives, everything will fall into place because you prepared for it. Revenge, when done thoughtfully, is not a shout into the void. It is a mirror held up to those who would harm you, reflecting the truth so clearly that it cannot be denied. I allowed myself to remember my emotions during the climax the way his confidence crumbled. The subtle panic that flashed across her face, the helplessness he could not hide. And yet the feeling that lingered most was not satisfaction alone. It was validation. It's validation of my instincts, of my perception, of my refusal to be dismissed or underestimated. I had been doubted, ignored, and deceived. But I had emerged, whole and unbroken, a testament to the resilience we often forget we possess. In the days that followed, my life felt lighter. I moved through my routines with a new sense of clarity and purpose. I laughed more freely, my interactions no longer tainted by fear or suspicion. I embraced opportunities I had hesitated to pursue, knowing now that the fear of betrayal or failure would never define me again. The betrayal had been a turning point, but it had not been the end. I had written my own ending. I also reflected on the lessons learned beyond personal revenge. Trust must be earned, not assumed. Vigilance is not paranoia, is self-respect. Strength is not in ignoring pain. It is in confronting it, processing it, and using it to propel oneself forward. Life will inevitably place betrayal, deceit, and cruelty in our paths. The question is not if it will happen, but how we will respond when it does. I chose to respond with clarity, with intelligence, with resolve. And in that choice, I found freedom. Most importantly, I forgave myself not for their actions, but for doubting my own worth. For far too long, I had questioned whether I was enough, whether I could handle adversity, whether I had the strength to stand against those who sought to diminish me. And now I knew. I am enough. I am stronger than I imagined. I am resilient. I am capable of facing darkness and emerging whole. The betrayal no longer defines me. The revenge no longer defines me. What defines me is the way I rose from it, unwavering and uncompromised. As I sit here, the night still outside, I realize that endings are not always dramatic. Sometimes the most satisfying ending is quiet, reflective, and filled with self-discovery. Karma has its course. Justice has its time. And the most important truth of all is that our own power, the clarity, the strength, the wisdom we cultivate is the ultimate victory. I had been tested, I had been hurt, and I had risen. That in itself is extraordinary. If this story resonated with you, if it reminded you of your own strength in the face of betrayal, hit that like button and subscribe. Share in the comments the moments when you reclaimed your power or overcame someone who underestimated you. Every story matters, and your voice could inspire someone else to rise, just as Melissa did. Stay strong, stay vigilant, and remember true power comes from patience, clarity, and knowing your own worth.